Hey, what is up, mortals? It is T-Secret here with an invite of you. Welcome to part 6 of Season 1 of What If Deku was Miles Morales Spider-Man. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So we begin. 3 days after the Class 1A went to the USJ, the class was waiting for Aizawa to show up and start the class. After the attack, the class was concerned. They weren't sure if class was cancelled or if they would continue to have hero training classes. UA was suffering from the press constantly, questioning whether or not they could keep the students safe. The class spotted their teacher entering the room.
Principal Nezu has reached out to prominent support companies that have experience dealing with the teleportation and gate quirks. He wants to see if he can prevent people from entering UA.
Aizawa grumbled, sounding extremely tired.
We are also reaching out to hero agencies to acquire information about the various abilities of the Sinister Six. This group of villains seem to take pleasure in targeting students.
The class started murmuring to each other. This was the first time they heard UA was reaching out to hero agencies for more information. 1A found it interesting that the Sinister Six was deemed a bigger threat than the group that attacked them at the USJ. Their homeroom teacher groaned as the class continued to talk. Eraserhead activated his quirk as he stared at his students.
Quiet! I wasn't finished talking. Due to the recent attacks, Principal Nezu has increased the security for the sports festival.
Eraserhead grumbled in annoyance.
You get 1 week to prepare for the sports festival. This will impact you going forward, so don't slack off.
Sir, is it really the wisest decision to have the sports festival after the attack on the USJ?
Ida said as he stood up out of his seat quickly.
Is this really the correct decision, sir?
Sit down, Ida. We need to show that we are not afraid.
Aizawa said with a disappointed sigh.
We have to show the civilians that villains don't intimidate us. People need to see that UA will stand tall and improve after a villain attack. Now that I've given that announcement, class dismissed.
With that, the teacher simply walked out of the room. Class 1A looked at each other in confusion. Slowly, the class got up and left. No one was sure about what to do for the rest of the day. Midori and Bakugo looked at each other as they left. Rather than waste time, the duo decided to focus on their hand-to-hand combat. The blonde-haired hero was ready to work on his combat ability. He knew that his green-haired friend wanted to train his quirk as well. Izuku wanted to try and figure out new ways to use his quirk. The emerald-eyed boy realized that he needed to train more. As the pair went to leave, they encountered a group of students blocking the entrance.
Oi! Extras! Move out of the way! You won't earn a spot in the hero course if you just stand there. You should go train. 1A won't accept anyone who is weak.
Bakugo growled in frustration.
You're watching a class that just survived villain attacks, leaving a classroom. How does that help you scout your opponent?
Rather than waiting for the other students to move out of the way, Bakugo simply started to move past them. He needed to train, and didn't feel like waiting around for an answer. The other students looked at each other in confusion. They weren't sure how to react to the rather aggressive approach of the 1A student. The students parted as Katsuki walked out of the room.
So sorry about him. We were just on edge after the villain attacks. Please move out of the way.
Izuku said nervously as he followed after Bakugo.
You won't be able to judge us by watching how we leave the room. The only thing that he will learn is that we are studious, which doesn't help since the sports festival is a week away.
Bakugo, that is no way to address a fellow student at UA. Everyone worked hard to get accepted into this school.
Ida berated Bakugo as the blue-haired boy went to the door.
I'm sorry about my classmate. The last few weeks for us have been stressful.
With that, Class 1A followed the three students who left. Midoriya was far more concerned with his lack of mastery over his quirk. In fact, the problem was he didn't know all of the abilities he got from the spider bite. At the USJ, it felt like there was another ability he could use. The green-haired boy felt that he could avoid detection if he concentrated hard enough. While Izuku enjoyed the mystery behind his abilities, it was starting to get tedious. The lack of understanding regarding what he could do was annoying. It didn't help that Spider-Man had limited knowledge regarding what abilities he would get. Another issue was the fact that the villain seemed to be attracted to his powers. The emerald-eyed boy began to wonder if it would be better if he left the school to draw the villains away. As he was leaving UA, Spider-Man swung down to speak with him.
Still thinking about their recent villain attack? I think it's time we had a private chat about this.
Spider-Man said quietly as he walked past the gate.
Villains like the Green Goblin won't stop targeting a vulnerable spot for you. His team is a crafty group. They like to wear their target down mentally first.
How do you manage to deal with these villains? Seem to take pleasure in just attacking us.
Midori mumbled as he started to think about the villain and leaving UA.
He seems willing to target people who don't have anything to do with what he wants.
It's just how the Sinister Six operates. They use civilians as hostages so that the heroes fighting them are more likely to get hit during the fight.
Peter Parker said with a heavy sigh.
Despite the Green Goblin's and Dr. Octopus's single mindlessness to acquire my abilities, they're highly intelligent villains. Just remember you are better off fighting them as a team.
How do we beat them then? Shouldn't we try and force them to react to what we are doing?
Izuku started to mutter nervously.
Should we really wait until they make another before doing something?
Right now, they are too quiet. The Sinister Six usually has all of its members committing crimes. I'm trying to figure out where their base is.
The American hero said calmly.
Remember to trust your spider sense. Mysterio is in Japan and he hasn't committed any crimes. He focuses on illusions.
The week went by rather quickly. For Midoriya, his training focusing on trying to improve his control over his raw strength. Another aspect that he focused on was his Bioshock ability. Izuku figured out that he could increase his Bioshock by focusing the electricity into a concentrated point. The green-haired boy went to the field where Midnight was waiting for everyone to gather. Midnight called Bakugo up to give a speech as the tournament started. The blonde boy walked up to the stage and looked at the rest of his competitors. Originally, he wanted to sound more competitive, but it didn't feel right after the villain attacks.
Villains attacked UA, tried to intimidate us into standing still while they destroyed lives. What those extras don't know is that we won't give up just because they attacked us.
Bakugo snarled as he tried to inspire people.
Everyone here represents the hero spirit. However, I will still win.
Katsuki walked off the stage and left everyone stunned. The contestants looked at each other in confusion. While part of the speech was inspiring, everyone else found the final part of the speech insulting. The students that weren't a part of 1A decided to grudgingly accept the speech. A drone watched the proceedings as the students went to the starting line. A few minutes into the race, everyone was approaching the robots. The robots were comparable to the zero-pointers in the entrance exam. President Mike noticed that something was off about the robots. It seemed like these robots had been tampered with, as weapons started to appear on the robots. Todoroki was the first one to react. Originally, he was going to freeze them in an unstable position, until he noticed the weapons on the robots. Shoto chose to freeze the robots in an unstable position so that everyone else could destroy the weapons. Bakugo reacted a fraction of a second slower. He chose to start destroying the robots on the left side. Midoriya went after the robots on the right side. The rest of the students followed suit. At that moment, smoke bombs were dropped into the obstacle course. With everything obscure, Izuku felt his spider sense go off. As he dodged to his left, he noticed a laser hit the ground where he was. the green-haired boy refused to let the attack continue. As he tried to think of a plan, he noticed he couldn't see his hand. In fact, he couldn't see anything that he was carrying. The emerald-eyed boy decided to use this to his advantage. The next thing that he did was identify where the attacks came from. As he approached where the attack came from, Izuku noticed a strange form in the smoke. As he approached, he realized it was a robot. This didn't seem to be one of UA's robots, so the student carefully approached it. With a careless step forward, Izuku dropped the camouflage and punched the robot. Just before he made contact, he added some energy into his fist. As the robot stopped functioning properly, the boy's spider sense triggered. There was no mistake, these robots were rigged to blow up. Midoriya quickly grabbed the robot and threw it into the air so that no one would get hurt when it exploded. Bakugo heard the explosion and paused for a brief second. It felt like the attack that he experienced back in middle school. The only difference was, this one felt like it was planned out more. It was almost like the villains were planning this from the very beginning. Before Katsuki could react to, something moved past him. The blonde-haired boy noticed there was something near him. As he approached it, he noticed that it was a robot of some sort. It appeared to be firing at students to Bakugo's left. The yellow-haired boy reacted quickly and aimed an explosion at it. Since he knew that it would explode, he aimed his explosion upwards to push the robot away from his fellow students. After that explosion, the smoke started to thin out. Shoto realized he needed to attack the robots carefully, otherwise they might hit another student. While the boy hated using his fireside, he was left with no other choice. The robots seemed to explode if they stopped functioning properly. Realizing this, Todoroki turned around and tried to use his eyesight to push the zero-pointers away from the other students. At first, the robots seemed to be inert until the first one that Bakugo blasted started to heat up. The half-and-half boy noticed that his ice was melting as he froze the robot. He used his ice to push the robots towards the edge of the obstacle course. He chose to ignore the smaller robots as he tried to move the larger robots. The other students noticed this and started to move away from the zero-pointers. Midoriya felt his spider sense go ballistic. He turned around in horror as he realized what was triggering his spider sense. Izuku quickly ran over to his classmate and grabbed him. The green-haired boy started moving away from the zero-pointers as the other robots started releasing heat. The first robot burst into flames as the emerald-eyed boy got out of range. Bakugo blasted over to help his friend save a classmate. Just as the trio moved a couple hundred feet away from the fire, the second robot started to explode. A massive light engulfed the area. Before we continue, I have something to say. This video is sponsored by Adobe. Adobe is redefining the digital experience through game-changing innovations that shape the next generation of storytelling. Adobe makes it easy to create, edit, and share digital documents securely, allowing you to collaborate and communicate across devices. Adobe Photoshop is your go-to application for raster graphics, editing, and digital art as a whole. At We the Celestials, all our thumbnails across every channel are created with Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Premiere Pro is a timeline-based, a non-linear video editing software application that is versatile and easy for beginners and master editors. Finally, Adobe After Effects is an industry-standard tool for digital visual effects, motion graphics, and compositing applications used in post-production. Many of our voice actors, audio editors, and video editors use Premiere Pro and After Effects to produce these high-quality videos. Click the link in the description to start creating now, and thank you to Adobe for sponsoring this video. Shortly after the second zero-pointer exploded, the other robots followed suit. The blinding light caused the contestants to start panicking. Once everyone was a safe distance away, the rest of the zero-pointers detonated. Despite the explosion, no one took any damage from the explosion or the debris. However, the close proximity to the explosion caused most of the contestants to temporarily lose their hearing. Izuku looked around in confusion. Despite the fire appearing to still burn, his spider sense had stopped going off. It was at that point that he noticed that the gentle breeze didn't seem to impact the fire. As he turned away to continue running, he noticed a beam of light connecting to the fire. It finally clicked that the explosion was an illusion. Spider-Man warned him that Mysterio liked his illusions. As Midoriya got closer to the second obstacle in the course, he noticed that several students were lying on the ground injured. The green-haired boy noticed a large amount of sand in the area. As he got closer, he realized that the second obstacle was a canyon that they had to cross. However, there was a giant entity out of sand blocking the way. Students stared in fear as they looked up at the giant hulking brute. Several students were trapped in the sand as it moved. Todoroki pointed at a mass in the sand. Izuku looked at where his classmate was pointing. At first, he didn't recognize the mass until the sand shifted closer to them. Both boys' eyes widened with fear as they realized it was their classmate, Mineta, with his neck bent at an odd angle.
This is Mineta dead? His head is in an odd position.
Midori stuttered as he looked on in horror.
Most likely. Any idea who this is?
Todoroki said with shock in his voice.
I don't think this is a part of the competition. Hopefully the teachers are on their way.
Do you think this is a member of the villain group known as the Sinister Six?
Izuku stuttered as he tried to regain his composure.
This is the worst situation for us, since we don't have a way to deal with him, but he can always create more sand.
Izuku examined the situation carefully. He needed to find a safe way for the other students to avoid the villain. As he was thinking of a plan, he saw a glint of metal coming towards the sand. Before the green-haired boy could do anything, a cloud of gas formed around the sand, coming from a metal canister. Ice started to form on the sand rapidly as another metal canister hit a different area of the sand.
Everyone, across the canyon quickly! The ice won't last long! The only way to safety is to complete the obstacle course!
Spider-Man said as he flung another canister at the villain.
More heroes are on their way to help deal with the situation!
As the sand was completely frozen, Spider-Man shot some webs out to create a safe path forward. He had his webs attached to rubble so that people had a safe way to move across the canyon. The students started rushing to the other side as quickly as they could. Panic started to grow as the ice started to crack. Izuku started to help people across the gorge. Bakugo noticed that some people were being shoved off the path. The blonde-haired boy used his quirk so that he could reach the people who were falling. Each time he blasted his way down to the person who was falling, he would then use his explosions to change directions. He would then propel himself towards the other side of the obstacle. Todoroki used his ice to freeze the area below people. He did this so that the people had a chance to escape before the villain made of sand escaped. Once the people who were falling were saved, Shoto used his quirk to try and keep the villain frozen. Midoriya helped the people who were walking along the ice to get to the top of the canyon.
Todoroki, let's go! We need to make sure that we get to safety so that the teachers can fight without holding back.
Midoriya called out once the other students were safe.
The teachers can take it from here. We need your quirk to make sure the villains didn't leave any other surprises in the obstacle course.
Todoroki glanced towards the villain as he saw Endeavor, All Might, Midnight, and Eraserhead arrive. It was clear the heroes were taking this seriously and weren't leaving anything to chance. Shoto then glanced towards the students and saw them panicking. The red and white-haired boy realized that his place was helping the students calm down. If the students continued to panic, it was likely that another villain could show up and make the situation worse. Class 1A quickly realized why Principal Nezu was more concerned with the Sinister Six. This attack seemed to be going off without a hitch. The villains seemed to know exactly how to attack UA without the school being able to prevent it. In fact, this attack seemed more intimidating than the USJ. Another concern was the fact that the villains specifically targeted the area where the heroes had the weakest presence. Midoriya started running towards the third obstacle in the hope that he could figure out if the villains tampered with it. As Izuku ran towards the third obstacle, doubt started to plague his mind. There were too many people ahead of him as he sprinted forward. Since he had spent time helping others, the people who fled had the chance to arrive at the third obstacle. As the green-haired boy arrived, he noticed a drone watching the students go through the final obstacle. He noticed that every time a person made a mistake, a bomb would go off. However, despite the evidence of tampering, the mines weren't capable of dealing any serious damage. The drones focused on this, as debris could be seen rising from where the heroes were fighting the sand-based villain. A large chunk of ice was about to collide with Uraraka as she carefully picked her way around the traps. The emerald-eyed boy's body started to move on its own. As his body moved, he remembered that most of the other students weren't looking up, since the main danger was below them.
We need to move quickly! There's a large chunk of ice coming towards us!
Midoriya said as he ran into the minefield.
Since we are trying to escape a villain attack, we shouldn't try to conceal the path we took. We should try and use our knowledge of where the mines currently are to help those behind us avoid them.
At first, no one reacted until someone looked up. At this point, Midori had reached his classmate and tackled her out of the way. As the ice collided with the ground, several of the mines started to explode due to the impact. Izuku was able to push Uraraka past the minefield. Despite this, his spider sense didn't trigger. It was at that moment where he had a moment of realization. It wasn't that the sense had stopped working. It was that there was so much danger that it was being overwhelmed. The green-haired boy understood why the villains were focusing psychological attacks rather than trying to kill the heroes. It became apparent the Sinister Six were aware of the weakness that Spider-Man had. It was clear that they were now employing that strategy against other heroes as well.
Raka, are you okay? I'm sorry if I hurt you while I was trying to save you.
Izuku said as he started to ramble.
How did the ice reach us? The villains should have been focused on the heroes. After all, the heroes posed a bigger threat to him. Deku, you're muttering again. I'm fine. It didn't injure me when you saved me.
Uraraka said in a scared tone.
Why do you think the villains are attacking us? Why would they risk more people when they could take time to prepare for another attack? Because waiting gives us time to recover. The villains are trying to wear us down psychologically. They want to break our will to fight them.
Deku muttered nervously as he started to help other people out of the minefield.
They developed the strategy when they were fighting Spider-Man. If they didn't wear him down mentally, his ability to sense danger would give him the advantage during combat. Combined with his strength, it made it hard for the villains to overwhelm him.
Some of the other students saw what Izuku and Uraraka were doing. Rather than running ahead, a couple of the students stopped and helped others across the minefield. This lasted for about 2 minutes as Todoroki arrived. Once he arrived, he froze the minefield so that no one had to worry about the mines triggering. As the minefield was being frozen, Deku picked up a rock and threw it at the drone. The rock collided with the drone and destroyed the drone. Bakugo arrived a little bit later carrying a student on his back. Everyone decided to take advantage of the now frozen minefield. Only the surviving members of Class 1A noticed what their green-haired boy did. Everyone else was too busy rushing to reach the safety of the arena. Gatsuki gave his green-haired friend a thumbs up. Despite the feeling of inadequacy, the blonde-haired boy felt he had to support his friend's decision. They needed to start limiting the amount of information the villains were able to get. Destroying the drone was the first step in limiting their ability to gather information on the up-and-coming heroes. Following Midori's example, the atomic blonde started exploding the drones he saw. Shoto noticed his classmates doing this, and used his fire side to start melting some of the drones. While they weren't able to destroy all of the drones, the 3 students were able to limit the drones' usefulness. They forced the person using the drones to withdraw the drones to a safe distance. This also prevented the drones from getting better information regarding the students' quirks. However, the drones were able to acquire some information, which the hero students would have to adapt to. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in all of this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of our YouTube members. Thirdly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. Our We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check out if you're interested. Fourthly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in today's excellent content production. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend out an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept numbers from 16 years old to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it for today's video. So, thank you all for watching, and have a great day.